Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And we have just had to come back from a little break. We recorded a lot of episodes in the quick succession, and we've had a little break, but we're back. We're happy to be doing these new episodes for you in 2022. Joy, 2022. Who would have thought it, eh?
It's kind of weird because it's like 2020 and 2. So that kind of makes me scared because 2020 was not our greatest year, Tim. But continue.
Yeah, but
we're hoping for the best. Go get vaccinated. We're hoping for the best, everybody. Continue.
Exactly. 2022 is going to be that's not even a word. A marvelous year. A marvelous year.
Oh, my God. Tim has become Joy and can't use words.
Oh, goodness. Joy is rubbing off. That's what it is.
Oh, sorry. Next year, we'll be able to do geography.
Yeah, Spain. Isn't that in Africa? Isn't that?
I feel so. Like, are you sure it's not, Tim? Like, are we sure? No, maybe I was thinking of Cairo, Egypt. All right, continue.
Anyhow, so we're going to start the episode as we normally start the episodes with a tip of the day. I have a tip and Joy has a tip. So, Joy, over to you.
Okay, my tip is going to go into a story. And the reason this story is really important is me and Tim have talked many times about when you get your blood drawn. So my tip is related to getting your blood drawn. And then when I tell you guys the story, it will all make sense. When you go to get your blood drawn, make sure they know where the tourniquet is. Which the tourniquet in today's age is not like a full-fledged tourniquet. It's like, they put a little plastic thing in, like tape it around your arm. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've had my blood drawn many times and I can extrapolate on my experiences, but carry on. Okay.
So I wrote Tim last week and said, I had a horrible experience. Tim's like, save it for the podcast. So he's doing one for the team, y'all. So I went to go get my blood drawn and I was getting tested for a few things. I needed a full workup because I had recently had some things that said my cholesterol was a little high, which is why I went vegetarian and things like that. Right. Mm-hmm. So they were doing a full workup on me and there was some things with pain and stuff they wanted to check. Well, I go there and it is like 12 p.m. on a Friday. Now, mind you, I had to fast before I went to this, and I'm the queen of hangry. You don't want to see me when I need to eat. It's a problem. But anyway, so I get there, and what had happened was the night before, I hadn't slept well. Not at all. I don't know what it was. Something kept me up. And then I slept really late that day. And I'm like, crap, I can't eat anything before I go get blood work done. So I get in my car and drive over to Quest, which is right above the Walmarts for us, Tim. Okay. So anyway, I go over there, go get my blood work done. Wait in the lobby. It takes forever for them to pull me out of the lobby. I'm like, y'all, I'm so hungry. This was dumb. When I was sleeping, it was fine, but now I'm awake. So I hadn't ate since like 7 p.m. the night before, maybe 6 p.m. Just dinner, no eat no more because I knew I need blood work. But then I didn't sleep, so then I slept too late. So I get there, and the girl calls me back, and she's like, okay, I had to get 4 vials of my blood. Not 1, not 2, not 4. So anyway, so I am anemic, and I have an iron deficiency, so this kind of stuff affects me a little bit more than maybe other people, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there, and she's like, I don't actually work here most days. I'm just filling in. I was like, great. That's a good sign. She was like, I don't know where the tourniquets are. Wonderful. Great sign. I got poked 4 times. I want everybody to know before I even start this story. 4 times. That's why my tip of the day is make sure they know where she walked around the entire office and starts opening doors and slamming them, trying to find the tourniquets. She's calling a nurse who obviously is not answering because she's in Vegas or something. I don't know what the girl's doing. And great resignation, everybody, whatever. So I'm just sitting there and she's like, okay, it's going to be a little bit. And I'm like, she's like, I can't find the tourniquets. I don't normally work in this stuff. So I'm like, fine. And I'm just like, okay, go look. So I'm like playing on my phone, just waiting. I'm like, oh my God. So she finally goes, okay, well, I'm going to try to prick you without the tourniquet. I'm like, okay, fine. I warn her, I've had 1 vein in my arm that they've blown. Like you can't get anything out of it. I said, try this arm. She could not get anything out of this arm. So then she goes to my hands. I have, what's kind of known as like neutral skin. So it could be, you could see blue-green in my hands. So I have very predominant veins in my hands. Mm-hmm. If you've never done makeup, that might not make sense. You've got cold, warm, or neutral. And I'm neutral. That's where you get the olive green tones. Indian. I'm Native American. So she's like, okay, I'm going to try to prick you. The vein starts rolling in my hand away from her as soon as she starts to prick me. So she has a needle in my hand, trying to roll it, trying to push it through my hand to the vein. And I'm sitting there going, I haven't ate in 12 hours. I'm so freaking done with this. She can't reach the vein. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, no, I'm done. So like, and then she's like, well, the reason we don't normally do the hands is it hurts more. And I'm like, duh. So then she goes back to the office, starts flailing door handles open. She's like, I'll be back with you in a minute. I hear her keep calling. I had to wait. She tried the arm. She couldn't get anything out of it. She tried the hand, couldn't get anything out of it. I'm just sitting there, haven't ate in 14 hours, this done with all of this, just sitting there flailing. Like, and she had me in this really high chair. So I was like kicking my feet, just like playing with my phone. And I'm just so done with it all. And I'm like, I'm so hungry right now. You don't understand. And so she like finally gets someone to come and bring her the tourniquet. She does the tourniquet. She tries one bait, still doesn't work with the tourniquet. She eventually gets it on my hand. She goes, well, the reason we don't do the hand is one, it hurts more, and two, it takes forever. So I'm there for 30 minutes with the slowest blood draw you've ever seen in your entire life. As soon as I got done with that, I was like, Charlie, I'm going to go get me an Impossible Whopper for Burger King, and I am eating French fries. And you better not judge me. So we went straight there and I ate it. So that is why, that was a big story. That is why your when you go to get blood drawn, make sure they know where the tourniquets are.
Oh, goodness me. Joy, what a story.
I'm serious. And when she was like, I don't normally work here, I'm like, please tell me you've taken blood before. I understand, people are going to fill it and stuff. Like, it wasn't that. She was super nice. And I could tell she was frustrated more than just like she didn't know what she was doing. You know what I mean, Tim? Mm-hmm. When you're frustrated, because she was just trying to be nice to me. But it's like, oh my God. I mean, I got pricked 4 times in the same setting. And I hadn't ate in like 14 hours.
Well, my blood drawing story is sort of pales into insignificance to yours. All I was going to say is I normally pass out when they take my blood, and the first time I was with the doctor's office, they put you in that chair with the wooden thing that goes over you.
Yeah, that's where I was sitting the entire time with my feet
and
kicking.
they started taking my blood, and I could feel myself going, and then I started slipping out the chair, so they lifted the thing up and let me fall on the floor gently so I didn't bash my head. And then
that's what you need, right?
Yeah, and I passed out, and I sort of came to, and there's like my doctor is in there, and there's all these people around, and they've got that cuff around your arm with blood pressure.
So awkward.
And I don't know, and I don't know what the thing is. And they said, oh, it's something over. Saying, no, leave him there. Leave him there. He's gonna have to stay there a little bit longer. And then I blacked out again, and then I came to again, and there was like less people in there, and then they got me onto a.
I mean, I guess in my world, there was only one person working, so I didn't have to worry about that. But everybody, my blood results were perfect. I'm as healthy as a horse, and my cholesterol has went down since cutting out the meat.
There we are, Joy. Well, look at that. The calamities that you had were worth it.
They were. And I was being tested for rheumatoid arthritis, and it came back as negative, which is great. And I am healthy as a horse, everybody.
Perfect. Well, Joy, I'm pleased to hear that.
Our horse is healthy. Where does that term come from?
Well, I'd assume you would want your horse to be healthy because they are working animals, or were working animals.
All right, Tim, what's your tip?
Okay. So, again, an incredibly specific tip.
Always.
But seeing as it's after Christmas and people may have got these as a gift, you know, chia pets.
I do know what a chia pet is, yes.
Yeah, well, I bought a chia pet before Christmas because it was a David Hasselhoff one, but that's beside the point. But they make chia pets in many different varieties.
Yes, I've had a Scooby-Doo one before.
Yeah, so there you go. So as you know, in the instructions of the chia pet, it tells you when it's starting to sprout that you need to put some kind of plastic bag cover over it, which creates a greenhouse type effect.
Gives that humidity kind of...
Yeah, whatever. When it's sprouting. So my tip is, if you have any Christmas gift bags left over, which you may have after Christmas, because what some people do, if you get a nice gift bag and it's not torn or written on, some people save them because, you can...
What Joy does.
Yeah, and I do the same. So if you happen to have one of these in your house that you may have saved, assuming it's not a tiny one, it perfectly fits over your chia pet, and it doesn't touch the chia pet foliage, as it were.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah,
because it's kind of got like a natural back shape.
Yeah, that's correct. And most of those bags are like plastic. It's like plastic covered paper. So it fits in what they're saying is it needs to be a plastic bag because it's plastic on the inside.
That makes sense because like it's gonna like so then the moisture doesn't like suck into the bag. It's kind of dripping down. I see. That's a smart tip, Tim.
There we go. And that's it. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who would have got a David Hasselhoff Chia pet for Christmas.
You know, you never know, Tim. We do bring in a certain audience, and you have said a lot about David Hasselhoff. So maybe.
You know, me and David Hasselhoff. I've told my David Hasselhoff story. I've shook the man's hand. I've seen Knight Rider. You know how it is.
I mean, that is one of my favorite stories Tim has ever told. So like, if you haven't heard that one, go back and listen to some episodes and you'll figure it out. That's one great story. Great story.
Fabulous. And the other thing I'd just like to say at this juncture, we are still looking for a jingle for Tip of the Day. And Phil has, we're still waiting, Phil.
Saz, if you want to do one, we take a Saz jingle just like right now. That'd be good too, right?
But I feel that Phil is one of our one of our pioneer listeners. He's been there since the start. He drives into work. He shouts at his radio when we get things wrong.
Come on, Phil. Do it. Do it. No peer pressure at all. Zero peer pressure.
And there we are. Okay, so this week it's Joy's turn to pick the topic. As ever, I don't know what the topic is. So Joy, over to you.
So we talked about this in one episode. And of course, I was like, oh, that's a good topic. And I was like, well, it's very topical for the time that this episode is going out to the world. We're going to talk about the weird and bizarre moments, music related at the Super Bowl, like halftime shows, commercials, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, fantastic. Because we last year we posted the episode with Katy Perry.
Exactly. So I went through and I found the top 10 weird, bizarre things that have happened during the Super Bowl. And we're just going to discuss it. And one we've kind of hinted on, but it's number 10. So we'll just do like a little drive-by for anybody who's maybe this is their first episode or we didn't get into it too much, which was, of course, the Red Hot Chili Peppers when they played with, okay. So, and Tim kind of hit on this, and I don't know as much about performing with live bands as Tim does. All of my experience has really been with choirs and it's been with musical productions, right? So I don't perform with a lot of live instruments. I was in a church band that performed live, but we didn't have no sound crew go with us. We don't know what we're doing. And that is what it is. But I mean, I was young. It was kind of my first exposure to music. And I played the drums, and I've told you guys, you don't ever want me to play the drums. So that should tell you how good the church band was. Anyway. Anyway, so it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing with the unplugged instruments. So the Super Bowl, a lot of the time, is pre-recorded. The halftime show is like this. They're not performing live in the way that you would. I know Lady Gaga made a big deal about performing live, but not everybody does. Some people do, some people don't, but most of it's pre-recorded. But for some reason, the Red Hot Chili Peppers in 2014, they fully rocked out, but they didn't. It's pre-recorded, but they left their instruments unplugged. I feel like to make a point that it's pre-recorded. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah,
do you think that was purposeful?
I think so. I mean, I've recorded these videos. I've recorded Best Shot with Jenny. I've recorded Love Shack and other videos. And we've discussed before the way that you do it. You record the stuff into your computer, all the audio, you get it right, you get it mixed. And then when you make the video, it is easier to mime to your backing track from a syncing perspective. It's just easier to do it like that. Now, when I've done those videos, I always make a point of plugging the guitar cable in because it looks really naff if you don't have it plugged in.
It feels purposeful if you don't.
Yeah, and then you normally find, because as we discussed in our Top of the Pops episode, most of those people were not singing live, or they were singing to track, or but the instrumentation track often was pre-recorded. But most people would plug a cable in their guitar just so it looks the part.
And I mean, to be fair, though, Tim, I mean, I understand a lot of people are like, I want to sing live all the time, but that's not how it works as a real musician. It's never how it's going to work. Tim made this point to me, and I had never really picked up on it. When people are doing the sound for these real live arena shows, they have to take into effect the echo. And by the time it reaches the back, it's a completely different, like, the travel of travel of sound. It really does actually make a difference. Cause like I went and watched Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and I was noticing I was in the back because I bought my tickets late. It was a Christmas gift. It was a whole thing. And I noticed there's about a half a second difference for when the band and when the people in front of me were moving their hands to when we were, right, Tim? And I at first was like, oh, these people don't know how to clap in time. And then it started dawning on me, the sound they were hearing was at a different time than when I was hearing it.
Yeah, and it's weird because the first time, I don't use them now. Well, I haven't used them for a long time, but I've gone through periods of my life using wireless systems on guitars, where you have a pack on your guitar and it's a radio signal that goes to your amp.
Yeah.
And you don't know this until you get involved with radio systems, because you leave the stage and your amplifier and you start walking away from the stage. The radio system will continue working just fine. But what you find, you move away from the stage and then you hit a note on your instrument, and there is an audible delay for the sound to leave the stage and get back to you. Because the speed in the radio waves, it doesn't really matter, especially with digital wireless systems. It's almost instantaneous. But the sound is coming out the speaker, and then it takes a while to travel from the speaker to get to you when you're however many meters, feet, or whatever away from the stage.
And it made complete sense. And this is, maybe it's like Tim's like good at this or whatever, everybody. But I had never really put it into like thought. Like, I understand the speed of sound. I understand the speed of light. Like, I get that there's going to be a delay. I'm not dumb, right? But well, I could be dumb, but not in this situation. But like, it was weird because there was the part where he was like having people move their hand to the sound. And I was like, God, those people have no rhythm. Like, they're not matching it. But then I was realizing it was maybe like a 0.2 second difference. You know what I'm saying, Tim? And it dawned on me, well, they're all the way over here and I'm all the way back here. So what I'm getting at is, of course, the Super Bowl is going to be pre-recorded, because one, it's easier, but two, it's gonna that ability as a sound engineer to take into account that entire, do you know what I'm saying, whole arena on top of the being live on TV. Like, of course it's pre-recorded.
Yeah, of course. And with the Super Bowl, they have all that staging that they have to erect in 6 minutes in a commercial break or whatever. So often, like you say, it is easier to do it to track. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but, they are a live band. They play live, they write their songs, they perform live, and that's how it is. However, when you engage with that gig, that's what's expected of you. That's
exactly what I think, too. And one thing that a great example of this was a few years back during Obama's inauguration, Beyonce, who typically performs live, she's got a great singing voice, whether you like her or not. She does have a good singing voice. I don't care what anybody says. You don't have to like her. Fine. I love her, but you don't have to. But she got in a lot of hot water because during the inauguration, I don't know, and it wasn't the national anthem, but it was like an America kind of song. I can't remember the exact song. And a lot of people, it was obviously pre-recorded. A lot of people gave her a hard time about it, but she said, for me, as an African-American woman, Obama being elected president was very near and dear to my heart. This is very important. She said, I was very emotional that day, and I did not feel I could give a Beyonce level performance. So she said, yes, my track was pre-recorded. And that was because I knew that it was going to be hard for me to sing that live naturally in that moment. And for me, and maybe Tim will agree, I understand wanting to go and hear someone live, but I do think there are times and places where backing tracks or pre-recording or things, they just work. Logistically, they just work and it makes sense. I'm not saying like Britney Spears, who always, lip syncs, but there are times where it makes sense.
Sure, and it depends on the kind of act you are. If I went to see Britney Spears and she's singing to track, or lip syncing to track, I'm probably going to expect that's what's going to happen, because that's
exactly you know what you're going for a Britney concert for.
Yeah, but as I said before, when I went to see ZZ Top and they were playing live instruments, but the vocals were on tape, as it were, and Billy Gibbons is miming to that. That's not. I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't like that.
That's 110%. But I'm just saying, like, when an artist explains that scenario to you, though, Tim, as a fellow artist, you get it, right? You see how that could affect their ability to sing like they naturally would. So I feel like everybody needs to come with people with grace, and we as a society don't do that anymore. So anyway, all right. get off my high horse. With that being said, I'm going to go to the next one. So the next one is Diana Ross leaves in a helicopter. Are you familiar with this story?
No, I'm not.
So in the it's Diana Ross, let's be honest. She can do whatever the heck she wants. But anyway, so it says basically, so, everybody's dead set on making a grand entrance, but Diana Ross took it a different way. So in 1996, so she was finishing up her set, a helicopter flew into the stadium, landed, picked her up, and then flew away as she sat on an open cabin. And I mean, she's sitting out, like just hanging out, holding herself off the helicopter and just like, peace out, hoes. But the Red Hot Chili Peppers won't even play with their instruments unplugged, but she can sing as she's hanging out a helicopter, Tim. But like, bye.
I think Diana Ross is in the same category as Aretha Franklin. She can do no wrong. She is the queen of vocals and all that kind of stuff. So
she could have flipped me off as she was getting in the helicopter and be like, fine, it's her. Do what you want.
Yeah, if Diana Ross wants a helicopter to come and get her from the end of the gig, I think that's fine by me. It's Diana Ross. I mean, she should be given extra Grammy Awards for that or something. I don't know. Okay,
but can we talk about how iconic that is? You just like sing your Super Bowl halftime show, which for our non-American people, the Super Bowl is the most watched thing in America. So it's very hyped up, right, Tim? Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl commercials. And I am not a sports person. Tim is not a sports person. We don't care about balls or where they're putting them or anything. We don't care. Kick a field goal, don't care. But I like to watch the halftime show because it's music. And then they have like a lot of music related commercials because Pepsi does a lot of the promotions for the Super Bowl. So whether you like football or not, or let me say American football, not soccer or UK football, I guess. Let me say this. American football is not something I care about, but I care about it's just the most watched thing of the year. And if you don't watch it, you don't know what's going on in pop culture, I guess, Tim, right? Like it's like a thing. So a lot of people watch it even if we don't care about sports. Mm-hmm. I don't always watch it that religiously, but I have in the past just because it's like the thing you do. And for me, it's like watch the commercials. Oh, look, they're kicking the ball again. Let me go get some chips from the kitchen. I don't care. Go for the field goal. Yeah, don't care. But anyway, I couldn't tell you the last but for someone who knows that and someone who's an American and who knows that, and Tim's an American now too, so he knows. Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl is so iconic to like flow in and have a helicopter fly in and have a helicopter just like pick you up and sweep off. Like, come on, Tim.
Yeah, I mean,
that's so like Diana Ross.
Do you know what it's like? It's like the backwards version of what Van Halen did at the US festival. I think it was 84 or 85, the US rock festival where there was 400,000 people or whatever. It wasn't them, it was lookalikes. But they had a plane come over the stadium and 4 guys jumped out the plane, skydiving into the stadium. They sort of landed somewhere in the stadium. They ran off and ran towards the stage. And then, of course, you had Van Halen dressed in exactly the same way. And then they burst on the stage and play.
I mean, that's pretty cool, honestly. I love that. But anytime you can do something that's so interactive, I mean, I'm down for it. I'm like a toddler. I'm like, oh, flying things and flashing lights. Cool. Yay. Like Hannah with the clapping. That's joy. Oh, look, I see lights. And there's a helicopter coming. All right. So we've talked a little bit about this one. It's Bruce Springsteen's Power Slide, which Tim brought into perspective. And I hadn't watched. So basically, in 2009, the boss utilized his incredible power slide, and the entirety of America got his crotch in their face.
Yeah, well, the thing, as I said before, the thing about the power slide was not so much the camera shot; it was the end of the power slide where Bruce Springsteen. To go back a step, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band accepted how the Super Bowl works. They didn't play live. Bruce sang to the backing track, and they understand that's how it works. So
they weren't trying to stick it to the band.
No, you take on the gig. That's how it works, and that's what you do. They're a live band, but that's the gig. Anyway, so
exactly.
So anyhow, Bruce, I've seen this footage. I remember I was living in England at the time, but I'm
looking at it right now as we speak and Jeff of it on repeat.
Yeah. So Bruce Springsteen does this amazing power slide across the stage on his knees, and it's Bruce Springsteen. And it's not so much that his area comes into the camera shot so much, but what he does at the end of the power slide, as he does it, he power slides astride of a mic stand. Mm-hmm. And he had probably what you would describe as a gentleman's injury. And
his face, Tim, I'm looking at it right now.
The look on his face of pain, sheer terror, yet...
And people are trying to still grab his hands. Audience members are trying to grab his hands.
Yeah, but it's pain and terror, but also... He's a complete professional, and he has his game face on, as it were.
He does, but there's you can see if you watch it. We'll post it in the Facebook group. There's a little twinkle in his eye. There's this moment, and people I'm watching the GIF as I'm doing because I'm reading my research, and the GIF's him sliding. He's wearing all black. He's got his hands back. You see him coming straight towards the mic thing, and the members of the audience are still grabbing at him as the poor man has, as Tim said, gentlemanly. He said it way better than I did. Whatever Tim said, injured himself.
A gentleman's injury.
Okay, well, that's the British way of saying it. The American way of saying it is he hurt himself. Yeah. Anyway, but it's so hard because he's doing so well. And Tim's right. He had that professional demeanor, but you see this one little twinge in his poor eye as all these audience members are still grabbing at it. I feel like it's an audience member. I'd be oh, okay, we're just going to back up. Let's just let him have that for a moment. Didn't even break a stride, just kept going.
Exactly. Then he came off stage, and then he came down from the adrenaline, and he's ah!
Exactly. So if we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about twofold with this one, and this one is not on my research, but we've hinted on it before, and I'm going to bring it up. We're going to talk about, of course, Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. So Michael Jackson has had some of the most notorious things happen to him. One thing me and Tim have talked about is, if you don't know this, and this was not the same Super Bowl, or maybe it was, I don't know. He did a Pepsi commercial. So Pepsi is usually who sponsors the Super Bowl and does the halftime show and just brings you the Super Bowl. It's Pepsi soda, which I think is a universal brand now. So it shouldn't come as a shock to anyone. And he caught fire. And Tim, do you remember exactly? I need to look that up. But he was doing one of them, and he literally he burned his pieces of his body during the Pepsi commercial for the halftime show, or from the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So what it was is that he was
okay. Tim remembers this story. This is not the one I'm getting into, but that happened.
Yeah, he was sponsored by Pepsi, and his touring was sponsored by Pepsi, and the halftime show is typically sponsored by Pepsi, and I think the last few years also Bridgestone tires have something to do with it. But it's a Pepsi halftime show. And for those people outside of the United States, anything to do with sports has multiple sponsors, because it's the Time brought to you in association with Subway, and we would like to go over to the Bridgestone tires correspondent on the thing, and then it's Pepsi, and it's completely relentless.
But there were pyrotechnics that happened. Some type of pyrotechnic thing happened, right?
Yeah. So what happened is that he was filming a commercial for the Super Bowl commercials. Yeah, and he was dancing, and I think he went up to. You can see the video online if you want to see it. But he walks along a catwalk, and he goes up some stairs, and a flash pot goes off, and it catches his hair on fire.
Yeah, it's 84. Yeah,
it was something like that, and it didn't. If you see it, it looks bad. And they put it out immediately, but it really hurt. It really hurt him. I mean, it scarred him, for life. Basically, it was second or third degree burns.
And I'm going to say something, and this is going to sound bad, but someone who's obviously, and this is not going to give a shock to anyone who knows anything about Michael Jackson. He obviously struggled a little bit with the way he looks, right, Tim? So these burns probably really, I feel like they hurt him to his core.
Sure. I mean, Michael Jackson, for better or worse, he suffered with mental health, and he probably could have done with some help or some people around him that could help him. The problem was he was so stinking rich, he just filled himself with yes men, and I don't ever think he really got the help he ever needed.
And that's so sad. But that's a debate for another time. I think he struggled with his body the way he looked for a long time. So that's what I was getting at. And that's me and Tim are not counselors or psychologists, but it doesn't take a therapist to figure out there's something going on there. LaToya's documentary, LaToya Jackson, if you guys don't know, LaToya's the one who didn't necessarily sing or do music as much. Her documentary goes a lot into detail. And it's actually, to my mom's credit, and mom listens. Hi, Mom. She talks about in LaToya's documentary, she talks a lot about Michael struggled with that from a young age. It did. And it's hard. But anyway, so that was one thing that happened. And I didn't really bring that up in my research because we've kind of hit it on it. Me and Tim kind of know the basics of that one. But also in 1993, Michael did the halftime show, which is not shocking to anybody. He was one of the biggest artists of all time, right? Michael does it. So it's some weird power. Have you ever seen Michael's halftime show, Tim?
Do you know, I don't think I have, actually.
Okay, so he just comes on. Okay, he comes on stage and he just stands there and stares at the audience for like 2 minutes straight.
Really?
And it's very Michael. So it's such a power move. So basically what it is, he's in the halftime show and he does absolutely nothing for 2 minutes. Most performances are only given 12 minutes, right, Tim? That's what that's what I read when I was doing all this. But for 2 minutes. And so what was very interesting, he's just standing there being Michael. You have to see it. It's just like, he's just standing there, he's just staring at the audience. It's super intense. It's such a power move, right? And so I don't know how much you guys have watched the This Is It, like when they're doing the concert footage from him. Michael was very like distinct and he knew exactly what he needed to do all times. Like, I'm going to do this. And the director or the producer didn't always agree with it, right? But he's like, I'm Michael Jackson. I'm going to do what I want. This is my thing. That's what kind of made him different. Because, you know, whenever someone can dominate control over their creativity, I'm all for it. And I love that. But I feel like this is one of those times watching This Is It. Michael was like, he's talking to that producer or whoever's over the Pepsi halftime show. He's like, I'm going to go stand on stage for 2 minutes and stare at the audience. And they're probably like, you're going to do what? Are you sure that's what you want to do? Like, could you imagine, Tim, as someone like producing this? You're like, you get 12 minutes and that's your choice?
Wait, is the music playing or is it silence?
It's silence.
That's weird.
It's so weird. But we're talking about it happened in 93 and we're talking about it now, Tim. So maybe he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I must pull that up on YouTube. I have never seen that.
He just sits in silence and stares at the audience. It's not like, you know, like a Smooth Criminal's coming up in the background, like getting a tits like break or something. No, he stands there and stares at the audience for 2 minutes.
Do you know what that? I mean, to me, that sounds like the something in the audio is broken. That's what it sounds like to me.
It's gonna be like Mariah Carey at New Year's Eve.
I
Did
saw
you ever
that.
watch the? Oh God.
Yeah, wasn't that 2020 New Year's?
COVID. It was COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, because we was home. I didn't have a gig. We obviously didn't have anywhere to go to.
We're all working from home, so we're all watching.
Yeah, and it was a bit weird.
Well, and I will say though, and I love Mariah Carey as a singer and an artist. I definitely think something has happened. I think from a musician standpoint, and maybe Tim will play into this or not, I think she never sang properly and she messed with her vocal cords. That's a big factor. But she also was having a hard time having children. She took hormones. And what's going to affect your vocal cords? Hormones, right? So I think Mariah Carey as a whole has kind of messed with her vocal cords. And so when she sings, I think you have to take an extra level of security in that, right? Like you have to take that into account. So a lot of times she does, I feel like she sings parts of it live and parts of it are backing track. You know what I mean? Like the basic things you can sing, but then the higher notes and the higher registers and things like that, she has to have a backing track. But I honestly think, Tim, she couldn't hear. Like she could not hear the track in her ear.
That's true. That's the monitor engineer's fault. I mean, thing is with Mariah Carey, I remember when she first came onto the scene and she did that MTV Unplugged and she did that cover of I'll Be There.
Yep.
And her vocal was amazing. She went all to those super high notes. She looked fabulous. You know, Mariah Carey had arrived. And then, yeah, she's had other hits. But I mean, as of late, I don't think she's she's aged as well as some other singers like Aretha Franklin, for example.
Yes, and I think that poor singing. Because, okay, for people who don't know, if you're not singing properly, what's going to happen is, so think about like vibrations. Like if I hit my hand and I get a vibration, I'm going to feel that. And I feel like I should be singing Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, but that's not what I'm saying. So like, you know what vibrations are. So if you take your knuckles and you constantly go and have vibrations between your knuckles, eventually they're going to be callous. So when you're singing improperly your entire life and you're pulling your chest voice, you're not using your head voice properly, and you just don't have, because a lot of singers are raw talent coming from, from wherever they're from, and they don't get the proper vocal coaching they need. So think about your knuckles going forever. What is that going to do to your vocal cords? It's going to get callous. It's going to get sore. You're going to get vocal nodules, all the things, right?
Sure.
So if she was early 90s, Mariah at her height, and she's doing these whistle tones and no one's teaching her the proper way to do that, and she's performing it every night. Because the other thing you have to think about is a performing artist, you're not just playing one night a week. Like, this is your whole job. You have to go out there and do it again and again and again and again. So her vocal cords are going to the point that she ruined them, and it's very common. And it typically happens as artists get older. But think about the stress a whistle tone that only a dog could hear would probably put on your vocals, right, Tim?
Sure.
She's known as having a 6-octave range. Some people say 8-octave, but technically it's 6 octaves, because maybe she can't hit those notes, but they're not sustainable, right?
Sure.
And that, I love Mariah Carey. I love Mariah Carey. That's the day I saw her. But if you put all those in perspective, of course the poor girl's voice is probably not what it used to be. And then she had a hard time having children, had to go through hormonal treatment. Think about testosterone is going to affect your voice, right? Estrogen is going to affect your voice. Think about what a man in their middle school ages, or whatever you call it in Europe, when your voice is changing, testosterone affects your voice.
Sure.
So I have a real soft spot for her, because I know at one point she really could sing. But I really think during that performance, Tim, when you watch her and the way she's acting, I don't think she could hear.
Yeah, I think it was probably a fault of the monitor engineer, or the sound check wasn't done correctly. Or it could be, you often find a lot of people at that level don't get involved with sound checks. They expect
she tends to be a diva.
Yeah, and expects their people to do it and then just arrive and everything's fine. But I mean, you need to go to your sound check.
Well, we will write Mariah Carey, Tim, and see what she said. She does have a track record of being a little bit of a diva. The other thing is, so I've heard that she shows up to everything ridiculously late. Have you heard that?
It wouldn't surprise me. It reminds me of a guy we had in Rough Justice once called Russ.
He is a diva?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he would not be listening to this podcast, so it's fine. I mean, Paul Hogg listens to the podcast, but he used to be so late. Like, he thought it was cool to be late, and we used to call him El Tarde, which is Spanish for the late one. And because everyone in the band had nicknames, so that was his nickname for a while. But it got to the point where you wanted him there at 7:30, so you used to say, "What time are we getting there, guys?" "Oh, we get there about 6:45," because you knew then you'd get him there when you wanted him. And it worked for a while until he figured it out.
I have family members we have to do that too when events are happening. If you told them the right time, they won't ever show up.
See, me, I like to get to things impossibly early. See, I feel great comfort. So like if I was going to a concert, when I saw Joe Bonamassa recently, wherever the doors open at 8 o'clock. And, I still have to drive from Christiansburg to Roanoke. And you know what, 81 can be a mess. So I would rather drive there, even if I don't get involved in traffic. I get there with an hour to spare. It doesn't matter. I can sit in the car park. I'm fully relaxed. I can enjoy my evening. I tell you how I'm not going to enjoy my evening. Sitting on 81 in traffic, looking at the clock, knowing that the doors open in 10 minutes.
Makes sense. I mean, I would rather do that. Like, I would rather show up early and sit in the parking lot and play on my phone than not be there. Like, I mean, I would.
And also, don't get me started with airports. I mean, I'm exactly the amount of time.
Tim's 100 years old at airports and shows up 4 hours early. I can guarantee that.
I don't
Am I
know.
wrong,
I
Tim?
spent 5 years of my life sitting in airport gates for the same reason.
See, I'm not wrong, everybody. But no, I mean, I appreciate that. And the other thing for me, and this is going to sound kind of rude, like if I make plans with someone, I feel like I am taking advantage of their time, right, Tim? So for me, the respectful thing is to say that their time is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, by saying their time is valuable, I should be on time. Is that a weird way of seeing it? I feel like everybody's time is valuable.
100%. I mean, it's just to be super late is rude.
It's just plain rude to me.
Everybody gets caught in traffic. Everybody has a bus or a train that doesn't turn up.
But there's always that one person. It's every time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always early. I'm known for being early. I like being early. And then once in a blue moon, I'll be late for a reason outside my control. And that's just how it is because that's how life works.
All right. So after me and Tim have taken this no dive into what we think is rude, there's somebody out there like, well, I'm always late. I hate you guys. Anyway, so I'm going to take a completely different. It's not about necessarily a musician, but just a weird halftime show. So a lot of people don't know this, but up until about the 90s, the halftime shows weren't really just like musicians. They were like some weird like conglomerate of acts, right? Like you got like cheerleaders or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
Pepsi
I remember took over.
Yeah, I remember finding out about this. It was like marching bands, cheerleaders. You may have one singer of the day. Yeah, it was a whole variety show sort of thing.
So there is a halftime show. It's from 1977. We'll post it, Tim. Make a note. We'll post this one, and it's from Walt Disney, of course. It's called Peace, Joy, and Love. And it's 250 people. It's a whole band. And they do a weird, creepy, and when I say creepy, I mean playing creepy version of It's a Small World After All, which is already a very weird song. And then the Mickey Mouse Club is like on stage, like doing dance motions, but they don't match It's a Small World After All.
I can't even imagine that. I mean, I've been to Disney. I've been on the It's a Small World ride where it's weird puppets from around the world or like animatronic things, and they're all singing this It's a Small World After All song. And I don't know how that would translate to a large stage or the Super Bowl.
With 250 people in a band playing it.
Yeah, it's just weird.
It's very weird. It's very kind of creepy, I guess. To me, it was creepy. So anyway, but speaking on that, back before Pepsi got a hold of the halftime show, a lot of times it was like kids like dancing on the stage and just weird stuff. So in 1991, it was like, man, would this be better if it was comprised of small children? Let's try it. Nothing weird here at all. It was hundreds of singing and dancing kids, costumed as Disney characters. Not good costumes either, Tim. It was creepy costumes.
Oh, dear.
And the only adult performances were President George, the original George Bush, George H.W. Bush. And then for like 30 seconds, New Kids on the Block came on the stage.
What?
It's so creepy and weird. So both of those are incredibly creepy and weird. And as much as I'm not like pro soda industry, thank you, Pepsi, for stepping us away from those stuff. Because they're so weird. And what's funny is when you zoom in on like the audience members, you can tell they're like going, "What the heck am I watching? Like, what am I seeing right now?"
So here's a question, Joe. Was you a fan of New Kids on the Block, or was it before your time?
Slightly before myself, but I have an advantage here. My older sister listened to him a lot when I was younger, so I do like some New Kids on the Block because I heard it as a baby growing up.
I just remember when they were around, and young ladies around me at the time were saying that Jordan Knight was a dreamboat.
So I don't know the members the way I know Backstreet Boys and NSYNC because that was more mine. But I mean, I do know Step by Step, "Oh, baby, gotta get to you, girl." Anyway, I know that.
And Hanging Tough was the big
Hang
song.
Tough. So I do know it, but partially because I had an older sister who was into it. I don't know them the way I know the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. That's kind of more my flow because I was just a little bit, but I am a fan. And if you I would go see New Kids on the Block in a concert if you let me. I'd definitely go.
Are they on the nostalgia circuit? Are they out there still getting it done?
They did like this concert tour 2 or 3 years back, and it was like them and some other 90s R&B artists. But it was like 2-3 years ago. I haven't heard much more, but they did do like a revamping. And so I think they're kind of on that nostalgia. I think it was maybe like Casey and JoJo and somebody else.
The only thing is like I can see the appeal of something like New Kids on the Block is that you have attractive people, probably in their early 20s, and they're dancing around having a great time. But does that really work when they're almost 50 years old?
So I will say, when I saw Backstreet Boys, went to Tim Cattell, the DNA tour, 2 years ago, pre-COVID. It transcended. They were absolutely amazing, but they're just a smidge younger than New Kids on the Block, like 2-3 years. I don't know if the 2 to 3 years makes all the difference, but it was so good, Tim. Like 10 out of 10. But I've told you, that was the moment I realized that those concerts are basically like a Broadway show. Because I went and looked up other YouTube videos of it. It's the same thing, down to the banter, down to the jokes they make, down to the encore. They have recorded it so much and done it over and over. It's the same. There's no authentic. It's not to insult them, because you know what I mean? I'm not trying to insult the band, but there was nothing authentic about it when I looked at all the other concerts and realized at the end of the show, Tim, because it's an arena tour, they came out and did a encore with the whatever the sports team that played in that arena was. And so they came out with their jerseys on. They're like, "You want an encore?" Yeah, right? Did it the exact same at every other one. Brought out the sports jersey for whatever arena they were in, and it was word for word the same, Tim. It's almost creepy.
Yeah, I think at some point rock concerts went from, guys standing around in jeans and T-shirts playing rock songs to becoming a Cirque du Soleil theatre production. At some point it moved to that. And it's not necessarily a vocal act like New Kids on the Block or NSYNC or whatever like that. It seems like even if you went to see, I don't know, Foo Fighters, for argument's sake, I'm sure it's much the same because they all now have the same lightings and the smoke machines and the production and the screens and all that stuff. So at some point, technology allowed this massive production to be put on that you could dismantle and re-erect in different places you go to, and it filtered down to every kind of act.
And I mean, that makes sense from a technological standpoint, but in some way, as the 90s kid that was so joyous to go see the Backstreet Boys after all these years, it kind of broke my heart that they weren't actually talking to me, Tim. I thought it was about me. And then I found out that it wasn't about me, Tim. I thought we cheered them on and that encore was our I'm kidding, everybody. That was my sarcastic. But you know what I mean? It did lose a little bit of its that feeling. They were so good live, though. So good. I would tell anyone to go see them. Another note, if you're into this, I recently started Trans-Siberian Orchestra live. Go see them. Amazing, amazing, amazing. But we had this debate in the drive home, and I talked to Tim about this. If Trans-Siberian Orchestra is an orchestra or a rock band, or where do you feel? They still think they're members of Sabotage and happen to have an orchestra behind them. A rock band with an orchestra behind them.
So I listened to a lot of Trans-Siberian Orchestra over Christmas because I listen to an album every day and I post it up on my Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. It's Tim Caesar, if you're interested in that. Anyhow, but I post up an album every day that I listen to. And over the Christmas time, I listened to a lot of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And then Joy went to see them. And then we had this debate. Now, I think they are a rock band that have orchestral elements. They are not an orchestra as in a classical orchestra.
But to be fair, I told Tim this. So we had the main guitars who happened to play with like all the big, because we talked about there's 2 Trans-Siberian orchestras if you go see them, depending on which coast you are. And you might get an original member, you might not. I had the original guitar player who's played with like Ozzy and all this stuff, Megadeth, all kinds of stuff. But he did not sell me. There was a female violinist from Australia. I don't think she's an original member. I don't think she has anything to do with Sabotage, because my husband, I told you guys, he likes the dramatics. And of course, Trans-Siberian Orchestra is the queen of dramatics or king of dramatics. So he loves that sound. And Charlie has been, I mean, this is one time that I can tell you, I was not as into like, I didn't know the history of Sabotage. My husband has all the albums from back in the day when they were 80s hair bands. Like he has loved them from the beginning. It's one of his like core pieces that he's dead set on. So going to see them was a Christmas gift to him. And so we went with some friends and everything and drove 2 hours. It's fine. They were great. But like this female violinist, I don't know where she came from. She had a suit coat on with like tails. And I mean, like many times, you know, the guitarist is across the stage and the bass player's across the stage and they're so dramatic, flailing their hair, just like getting it right, Tim. Like that's the 80s hair band. She stole the show every time. I mean, her dramatics, her playing, the sound, everything from her, like I could not, and I wasn't the only one. I talked to everybody who was with me. She stole the show. I don't know who this female violinist is from Australia. I Googled her later because I was trying to figure out who she was. Don't know any band she's ever played with. She may be a newbie, but I'm telling you guys, 110%, I would go watch her. And I'm not like big into being a violin player. Now, true story, my husband plays the violin, not well, but he played it in high school. That's what he took violin lessons for because of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. That's why he chose to start learning the violin. So, but she was, oh my God, Tim, like I could go watch her live over and over again. Just say, girls got that, like, you know, like we talk about, you don't always have to be a great musician to have that spark on stage. She had that spark through and through. We'd go see her over and over again.
Yeah, the only female violinist that I know of that works in that kind of rock thing is Tracy Bonham. If you're familiar with Tracy Bonham, 90s singer Tracy Bonham.
I know she is, but it wasn't her, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's not her. But she plays electric violin, and she toured with Blue Man Group, and there's a video out called The Complex. I mean, it's probably 20 years old at this point. And then she sings some of the songs, and then on Bubba O'Reilly, she plays electric violin, and she is a fantastic violin player.
Violin is such a cool instrument to begin with, right? We can all agree with that. It's such a cool sound. But yeah, I would just say, if you've never looked her up, just Google female violinist, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, give her a listen. Yeah, I'm not sponsored, by the way, everybody. Anyway, Tim, that was a segue. So back to the Super Bowl. I got 2 more that we're going to talk about, and then we'll let you guys go. But so did you watch, and I don't know how much, Tim's got some, we've had some conversations, but I've never really gotten a feel for how Tim feels about this artist, Lady Gaga. Did you watch her roof jump, where she jumped from the roof? Have you seen that? No,
I will be perfectly honest with you. I am not a fan of Lady Gaga. However, I can appreciate
a little.
But I can appreciate what she does, and obviously she's very successful, and people think a lot of her. So the thing about Lady Gaga is, and I think that what maybe you have to step out of the realm. I'm going to give you some, I hate to say this, education, because Tim's usually the one educating me on music. But the thing about Lady Gaga is I think she did 2 things very well to come into the limelight. And say what you want, but I think she did it well. And I think it's called what I call almost like the Britney Spears experiment, or like the Miley Cyrus experiment. So I have a theory on pop music. Oh God, we're going to be here for forever. But I have a theory on pop music. And what it is it's this, have this like this almost like a static pop music sound, right? Like this very like, think Gaga Poker Face, or think Britney, early Britney, or think early Miley Cyrus, right? You have this very static pop sound, and you basically fall from grace, and then you build yourself back up, right? And then you're at the top of your game. I call it the Britney Spears effect, and I think Gaga played into that. So Gaga had her first album with Poker Face, right? And Just Dance, and they're very poppy. They're very kind of trash pop music. If you say, I love it, but that's what it is, right, Tim? That's kind of what you hear when you hear those songs. She's a classically trained artist who went to Juilliard. Gaga is.
She can sing like The Sound of Music and do opera and sing with Tony Bennett. Like her voice is astounding, but she knew what sold, Tim. She knew what sold, and she played the Britney Spears moment. So she was at the height of her career. She kind of had that little, and now she's back at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she knew that. And I think there's something. And when you watch her interview, she literally said, basically, that I'm trying to play the fame game.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you like it or not, she did it very well.
Sure.
And that's to say intelligence.
I've got nothing against her. I haven't particularly enjoyed what I've heard,
Well,
if I'm being
I'm
honest.
going to have to open your mind, Tim, to the stuff that you don't hear on the radio, because she's amazing. Anyway, obviously Joy's got some biases here. But for real, what you don't hear on the mainstream radio, that pop kind of thing that I said she played into to get famous. So she played into that to get famous. She knew what she was doing. She literally said, I'm playing the fame game.
And also, she appeared on MTV's The Real World under a real name of Stephanie.
Yeah, her name is Stephanie. And she's Italian. She comes from New York. Anyway, so Gaga, though, with back to the Super Bowl, she did the Super Bowl halftime during 2017, and she jumped off the top of the stadium into the audience. Like, okay. I'm talking about full force body jumped, but it was pre-recorded for obvious reasons, because they don't need Gaga breaking her face into the audience on like live Super Bowl. Probably wouldn't go well, whatever. But anyway, if you've ever seen it, it's super cool. So she she starts out, have you ever watched her Super Bowl halftime, Tim? Probably not, because you're not a big fan. So she starts out singing not the national anthem, but some America song. And like you just hear her saying like the land of the brave or something dramatic, right? Mm-hmm. And then she just out of nowhere, she's at the top of the Megadome. She full force body jumps into the stage. And from people watching from home, it looks like she's really doing this live. I now know, well, I knew that it was pre-recorded, but it was super intense. Like, I mean, I'm talking like 10 feet. I'm sure there were wires on her. I'm sure there was a whole camera crew, you know what I mean, to give the effect even more than it was. Mm-hmm. But it has gone down in history that like, because like if you were watching it live, and I was, because I was excited for Gaga's halftime show, it was like heartbreaking. Because I mean, she literally jumped from the top of the Houston Dome to the stage in the middle of her concert. Yeah. And that takes Scott. And so speaking of which, we had a conversation today at work about like people stage diving. So that takes stage diving to a whole new level, right? We're talking about stage diving. My husband, when he went back in the day to the Warped Tours, I don't know what band it was. We'll just pretend like it's My Chemical Romance. No clue what band was on stage. He thought he could a body surf across the audience. Mm-hmm. Lost 2 shoes. Oh, people took his shoes off and threw them. And then he ended up with heat stroke because like a heat type thing, because he got too hot by body surfing with no water, dehydrated. But he, bless his heart and his like heat stroke mind and like kind of out of it. After the audience dispersed, he spent 20 minutes trying to find his shoes. Oh, God. And there were no drugs or alcohol involved. He was too young for that. So Gaga can literally body jump from the top of its dome, and like, but there's no body surfing. But like, you know, like I always have this worry if I just like jumped off the stage, if I would just let me fall. Yeah,
in my almost 50 years I've lived, I've never done that, and it seems less appealing as the years go on.
And Tim, with what you know about me, you know I'd write you and be like, so I had a few too many shots with some Diet Coke last night and thought it was a good idea to body dive into it. You'd be like, what did you break?
Joy, I worry about you driving a car to a place that has a gig on, let alone you jumping off the stage. No,
you're worried about me when I park the car and I go in the parking lot, so it just runs me over.
Yeah.
I'm the only person that Tim knows that legitimately was a pedestrian walking the street and got hit and had to go to the hospital.
And the thing is, I've witnessed it. Joy and I, at lunchtime at work, were walking to Starbucks. She was buying a load of drinks for her team, and she's walking back, and we're just talking about nothing. We're walking, I think we're walking, as we would say, on the sidewalk, and this car just reverses into Joy. I mean, what's that all about?
Like half an inch beside me, and I like yelled, "Hey, I'm here!" And Tim's like, "How? This doesn't happen and like my instant like reaction to me knowing what's happening. So I cannot do gaga and jump from the top of the dome into the stage. And the worst part is, and this is gonna sound really bad, I wouldn't die. I just broke every bone and have to suffer for the next 6 years to a year. Like I wouldn't even get the easy way out. Yeah, no, and that's funny. It's funny because like people think I'm joking and then they'll be around me and they're like, oh no, she's serious. This happens all the time. All right. So we'll give you the number one. And that sounds so dumb. And I hate to say it like this. I hate this term. They're calling it Nipplegate.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
It's the one. It is the one where Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson were on stage and they were doing their little song and dance. He reaches across the body, grabs her, and when he pulls his hand off, the whole shirt goes with it. And the American populace is not like the European populace, and seeing a nipple broke the whole world.
Yeah, I can tell you, I was living in England at the time. Obviously, this wasn't cool, and you know, hindsight has proved it's not cool, but we had a newspaper called The Sun, and The Sun, on page 3, had a topless lady in it. Now, that newspaper was selling millions of copies, and people were seeing that, and on TV, you'd see people without any clothes on, and it was not a problem. So, when we started seeing news reports about the fact that Janet Jackson exposed one of her breasts on TV, and we're like, well, so what's the problem with that?
It seems so silly. And I'm going to say something as a woman. How many men's nipples do we see out there when they're sitting on the beach? It's just a nipple.
Sure.
It's just a nipple.
Sure.
I'm sorry. It's just a nipple. Get over it, everybody.
And it was like for 0.25 of a second or something.
I watched it live and I didn't even notice it as a kid, Tim. So I was young, right? I would have been young.
Yeah.
What year was Nipplegate? 2004. So I was 14. Mm-hmm. So I was watching with my parents because, like I said, in America, you just watch the Super Bowl. It's what you do, right?
Sure.
Just like one of those things. And mostly I was there for the commercials and the halftime show. Well, and then I heard and then they instantly moved the camera. Like it was like, you hear the audience go, oh, like it's some big deal. And I, as a 14-year-old, was like, what is going on here? What is everybody? I didn't even see it. I only saw it as a 14-year-old. I didn't even see it because it's like him dancing. He puts his hand across her. He pulls it off and it's so quick. And he puts his hand back over her, right? She puts her hand up. I didn't even notice it live. It's the backlash and everything's happened after it, Nipplegate, as they call it, that made me cognitive that it happened. But in the moment, Tim, it's kind of like, when you're something happens and you don't even realize it happens until you hear everybody talking about it. I didn't even know. So I feel like we made it worse than it had to be, right?
Sure, 100%. And the other thing is living in England, you'd often have a lot of live sports on the TV, whether it be the football trophy cup or whatever it was called at the time, or Wimbledon or cricket or anything like that. And there was a rich British tradition on live sports that someone would streak naked across the field. I mean, this is standard stuff. And, and it would make the front page of a tabloid newspaper because it was funny, and then it would just disappear.
And that's so weird to me. And they fined. So here's how it went. So the Federal the FCC, I can't say words. FCC fined CBS, which is the broadcasting company that had the Super Bowl that year. So every year they all bid, NBC, ABC, and CBS in America bid to see, or Fox, who's going to get the Super Bowl, right? Because it's the most watched thing. So this year it just happened to be CBS. It can vary from year to year. So here's how it went down. For indecency, the FCC fined of a violation of $27,500. Then they increased it to $325,000. And then it finally was $550,000. And this was to be to avoid going to court. They had to pay, CBS had to pay that much. I'm for a nipple, Tim. And to be honest, as a 14-year-old, I didn't even notice it, but all this backlash, now I know about it. And it's been how many years? It's kind of silly. You know, when like a little kid like makes a scene and acts like they heard themselves, like they fall and they hit their head. Everybody's like, don't make a big deal. They're fine. Because if you make a big deal, then the kid will make a big deal, right? Because it's a mental thing. Like you bump your head as a kid and they're like, everybody just ignore it. They'll be fine. It was just a little bump. But if I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? They're going to feel like something's bad happening. America literally did that to me. Yeah,
it said to somebody who was not living in the United States at the time, it seems utterly ridiculous and absurd.
And there was some conversation that it was a political stunt. I don't think it was. Something about taking the eye away from the Iraq war. I don't know. That just seems silly. A lot of people have struggled with, and this is where I feel I agree with. So they have banned Janet Jackson from like everything, right? Mm-hmm. She's not allowed to perform. She's not, but Justin Timberlake, he gets a pass. He can do whatever he wants. Why? He was the one who ripped the damn shirt off.
I was listening to a number of NPR podcasts about Janet Jackson. Recently, they had a whole feature on her about 6 months ago. And that was pretty much the gist of where they landed on this. It's like Janet Jackson got cancelled. And Justin Timberlake, it was like it was fine. He was back out there. And
he got to do the Prince halftime show.
Sure.
And put the hologram up that Prince never wanted. I mean, why does he get a pass when he's the one who did it to her? I mean, I don't think it was planned, but I'm just saying, why does he get to go on? But because it was her nipple, I guess. I don't know. Being a female's hard in America, y'all.
Yeah, I think that's the conclusion they came with, that she was a woman and she was a woman of color and she became the scapegoat.
That's so hard because Janet Jackson's an amazing singer. I love putting it for music. She's fantastic. And like it's literally like they tarnished her reputation. Mm-hmm. And then he gets to do whatever he wants. And then that whole thing with him with Britney Spears. So I don't know how much you know about this, Tim, because I don't know how much you're into the 90s. But like there were times where they were doing like him and Britney used to date, right? Mm-hmm. And he would say things in the interview about things that he shouldn't when they were dating. I don't have to go into detail about that. You could figure it out. Mm-hmm. And he would always get a pass. But if Britney said anything like that, it's like, oh my God, not America's sweetheart. He always gets a pass. Why does he get a pass?
Yeah, I mean, it's inequality, Joy. That's what it is. And it's not right.
Fight the power, everybody. But anyway, moral of the story is Nipplegate is weird. One, because we overreacted to just a nipple. Mm-hmm. Two, like, I'm sorry, all of us have them. There's no human being in the world who's never seen a nipple before. Mm-hmm. Like, get over it. That's how I feel about it. I don't know if everybody feels. That's how I feel. But at the same time, I understand your kids are watching. But as somebody who was a kid during that time, I didn't even realize it, Tim, till after the fact.
Yeah, I think I think when I was listening to the podcast, they said it appeared on screen for. It's like 0.26 of a second.
Unless you were
something
actually
like
looking for it, you didn't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like his hand goes across her chest and then he like picks his hand up. And when he picks his hand up, I guess he kind of like put his finger down and kind of the dress went with his hand. But like she puts her hands up and he puts his hand. I mean, I did not know what happened. And they were very professional and kept performing and handled it right. Mm-hmm. It was only after the world went crazy that I even know what happened. And I was 14 years old. I'm not saying 7. Like, you know, I was a teenager, but it wasn't enough that it made any difference to me. But now as an adult, I'm like, why are we getting so bent out of shape over a nipple? I don't get it, Tim. And like you said, the Europeans are probably like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, and that was what everyone in England certainly thought at the time.
Okay, and with that, Europeans think Americans are crazy. Shocking revelation facts in the No Name Music. And we'll leave you with that. All right, bye.
Bye-bye. See you later. Bye-bye.